We're live.
Hello. I am thrilled to be here today to welcome Susan Goodrich and Susan Snyder to the Empower Network TV. As you all know, the network has grown so rapidly in the last few weeks that in an effort to highlight and interview more of you in the network, Amos has asked several of us founding members to try some group interviewing. So my name is Elliot, and I really want to thank the Susans today for being really willing to experiment and play with me. So I thank you very much. And as if most of us know Amos really well, you know that there's really no formal process to this interviewing, that there's no structure, and that's what makes it so fun and inspiring, right? So the way I see this working today is that I'll give each of you the opportunity to talk about who you are, where you are, and why you do what you do. And then after each of you go, we'll have some organic, interactive conversations. Does that work for you too?
Sure. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Susan Goodrich, would you start for us today?
Okay, well, my name is Susan Goodrich. I live in Eastern Ontario in Canada. I moved here from Toronto during COVID, and I'm a transformational life coach, and I really like to help women primarily, though I'm not closing my doors to men because I have worked with many men in my life, in my time, and I help them manifest their dreams because that's kind of what I did at a very later life and at a very later time in life. And I feel like I have a dream formula that really helps people actually manifest their dreams.
Oh, wow. So tell us about are you willing to share some of
the formula? I could, yeah. So, yeah, I always wanted to be a mom, and it didn't kind of happen that way. I worked in the engineering environment for, over 30 years. And I had relationships, and I thought I would, end up having a family the way that everybody else does. But then I started a business in my early 40s, and that kind of took over. I did software training in the engineering world. And then through that whole process, I learned a lot. I had had my own spiritual journey, and, learned to actually connect with my heart, which is, because in the engineering world, we use our heads a lot.
Yeah, yes.
Right. And so just really learning to connect with my heart and my body and the wisdom of all of that. And one day somebody announced, a friend of mine told me that she was going to adopt a little girl from China. That was her plan. My whole being went into a state of joy. And I was like, what is that all about? And so I was probably about 49 when that happened. And I followed my heart, and I followed the process that I use for manifesting my dreams. Now, I had manifested other things before that, but I ended up at the age of 53 giving birth to two beautiful, healthy baby boys. Wow. Who are now, they will be 14 next month. And so, yes, that puts me at the age of 67. And so I've, been fascinated with human behavior. And so when I learned all of these coaching modalities and the process that I now have through the transformational coaching, that I'm able to layer my dream formula in there. And I'm like just getting some pretty incredible results for my clients. So.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
So you started a family and a business and having twins all at the same time, right?
Well, it was over. So I was in my early 40s when I started my business. And when I was about 45, I bought an old Victorian home and restored that. And then I continued to grow my business, but I knew there was something missing. And so that it was like, so in my 50s, that's when I gave birth to my boys. So yeah, so that's kind of part of my story.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
And so further, your current clients, and what are you doing with, you mentioned you're working with men and women. I noticed that you mentioned it in your Facebook page. I noticed a female feminine power coaching. Is that still true? And how does that work? Because I know female energy is non-gender specific. So you could certainly tell me how that works when you're working with men and women.
Right. So really, the feminine energy really is their feminine qualities. And I like, rather than calling them feminine and masculine, I'm more like, rather than the doing, right? It's more of the being. And when we can tap into that being, which is really your body energy, right? It's like, I have a really deep intuitive knowing. Like, I just felt really called to do what I did. And my understanding and my belief is that, when we can tap into those feminine qualities, which historically were not really honored in the workforce or out there. And so a lot of us never spent time developing them. But when we can develop them and we can learn how we can use them to empower the rest of our lives, we become more whole as humans, right? When we actually have access to our feminine qualities. And men have those as well, right? They have the option to tap into those, right? Our deep intuitive knowings and our heart wisdom. And that's really what I love to share, is talking about, how to live with an open heart. Like, I've just kind of come up with some acronyms for being able to work with that, so that we can really experiment with learning to live with an open heart. So we're not in fear and anxiety, that we're not in the energy of lack. We don't, hide our secrets, we should learn to share our stories, right? And then that whole piece of, sometimes, and this happened to me, right? Like, had a great life, what looked like a great life, but I knew there was something missing, right? So there was that little piece of emptiness. And the other thing that I had learned through all of this process was being able to tap into something that I had really struggled with, was because we work with identities. And so when I began to understand the identity that I had, I was not able to connect with women, because I was either thinking I was either better or I was less, because it's very different when you work in a male dominated industry, right? So what I did was, once I became aware of that, I was then able to start to connect with women. And I have created what I call power partners. And that's one of the things that I coach on, right? Because we often feel so isolated. And I think that's the real draw for me with this work, because it allowed me to create really deep heart-centered connections with others, and to support people who really feel like they live in isolation, right? So and it's their skills and capacities that we need to be able to do that. So that's a little bit about my story.
So how do you connect the power partners? Is there a network of power partners, or how does that work?
Well, we first of all need to kind of almost be a power partner ourselves, right? We need to know who we are, what we stand for, our values, and that all comes from our heart as well. So it's really about learning who you are, that whole piece of know thyself, which is really important, right? Because our dreams and our values all come from there. And so when you have access to, and embrace who you are, then when you start to recognize some of those things in other people, then you can step up into that. But there's some really, I've had experiences where all of a sudden I was really jealous of another woman because she was doing the work that I was. And I was like, oh, how do I deal with this? So then I actually have tools or skills that you can actually do, where you really kind of go, oh, once you become aware, right? And as a transformational coach, awareness is step number one, right? That's 70% of the transformation. So, and so when I became aware of that, I was actually able to go and apply this little process to that, so that I could actually really connect and step through that identity that I had, so I could break it down. And so that was really, really kind of fundamental for me to be able to actually step into having power partners, really, right? To be able to really connect and support another. So I found I have a power partner that I've been working with for the last almost 2 years now. And she was in the same coaching training that I was in. And so that was how I kind of recognized there was something in her that I recognized that was sort of similar to myself. And so that's, I reached out to her, right? I had, that was a scary thing for me at the time. But I reached out to her. Yeah. And then there's a lot of other networks that I've had where I've met other women as well. And now that I have those skills, it makes it a lot easier to do that. Right. And it also now made it easier for me to connect with men, which who, you know, I adore men. So
yeah. So what about the identity of being an older mother? How did that work? I mean, I know I had my last child at 40 and felt that was, you know, certainly a different stage than having the children at 30. How did that impact your life and your business? And
well, it did impact my business eventually, like after several years, because I just was exhausted. I mean, I had nannies in the beginning, and that was helpful. There's a lot of learning that went on with that, right? Even as moms, right? We become
there's no instruction manual.
No, and that was one of the reasons I became a mom, is because I knew that I would never develop to be the human I was meant to be unless I became a mom, right? Because we're not challenged in that way, right? Right, that evolution. So yeah, it was interesting. For me, I ended up using, there was a yoga studio that opened up about half a block from my house when my kids were about 2. And so I would go to yoga, 3 times a week. It was my sanctuary. And it really is part of the fundamental of some of the work that I do, because there's a lot of the work that I do is very somatic. And so what I really recognized that was when I was doing yoga, how that really shifted. So I was like, oh yeah, there's a body piece in here as well. And so that's a part that I bring in. And I did my yoga teacher training at 62. So,
wow, you really did fill a lot in. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there is a challenge of being an older mother for sure, but yes. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. We'll come back to hear more of your story. I'd like to shift over to Susan Snyder.
Certainly.
And tell us who you are, where you are, and why you do what you do.
Well, first I'd like to say I love Susan Goodrich, because I just started my personal growth transformation 3 years ago.
Wow.
I'm retired. I'm a widow. And as I got older, a few years into retirement, it was like, I'm not happy. Something needs to be done. And basically what it is, it's that inner longing for your heart's desire that I ignored or put life in front of for so many years. And then once I retired, I got involved with this business. I'm into fintech, and have seen my mentors and sponsors, Don and Lucky Reed. Oh, and when I heard them speak, it was just like a part of my soul was just like reaching out of my body to them. That they had the energy, the drive, the ability to enjoy life and accomplish things and break them down and make them better. And I'm just looking in awe. It's like, I want to do that. So I came into the business without any skills, and I've been developing ever since I got here. So I'm very grateful for that. A lot of what Susan talked about is just me, from the beginning. I was the black sheep of the family. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I took a lot of easier, softer ways, that worked very little, short periods of time, because everything that I tried to do fast and hard and easy always created more problems for me that I was going to have to work through. And I said, okay, fine, I'll do what I have to do and just put up blocks. And finally, it got to the point to where I got married early. I was 20. I married him because he appeared to have everything that I was missing. He was very outgoing. He came from a well-to-do family. He could talk to anybody. I loved his charisma. And I said, oh, okay, I'll attach myself to him and my life will be fine. Well, of course, you only see what you choose to see at the time you're looking for what you want to feed yourself with. And so there were so many other things going on. Basically, I married a full-blown alcoholic. After 2.5 years in 2 rehabilitation centers later for him, me and my 1.5-year-old daughter decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then I was stuck with me, but not having any real direction of what I'm going to do. And I still didn't even know who am I, what am I, or even why am I. So, so life goes on. And eventually I get to be such an emotional mess that I end up in a 12-step program for people with emotional problems not related to substance abuse. And I spent 35 years there.
Wow.
And it was amazing. They gave me that safe space. I learned principles. I learned to start taking responsibility. I grew, I changed. I had, relationship issues with my daughter. They gave me a lot of foundation for that. We continue to have a better relationship as time goes on. I found my second husband in that group. But I was still immature to the point that, well, oh, good. Now I'll marry him and he will, take care of all my wants and needs and then everything will be okay. That old mindset. Well, we did get married for 7 years were rough because I married a man and I was not a woman. So having to grow up and just, surrender to the fact, okay, God, you want me to love this guy, you do it because I don't know how. And then just started concentrating on what I'm doing, what I'm bringing to the party, concentrating on my life rather than on what I'm not getting from him. And it did transform my marriage. I'm very grateful for that.
And was there a particular catalyst or mentor or that got you?
I had several people in the group guide me along, which was very helpful. It was very helpful. And I did things, we used to get up and talk, tell our little stories, 7 to 10 minutes, whatever was going on at the time. But over the years, what happened is that I started wanting more again. And if you stay in one group long enough, what I found for me is that if you allow it, it can also turn into a box. It can be a comfort zone. And I was at a point to where I need to branch out. I need to learn. I still want a bigger life. I was surrounded with my husband and my friends in the group, and it was nice, but it was not that big life I dreamed of as a child. Mm-hmm. And so after 40 years, my husband said, you know what? It's time for me to go. I've done my time. I feel good about it. And I went right with him. And of course, I shocked everybody in my group. It's like, why? Why do you think you don't need us? I didn't say I don't need us. It's just I want something more. And that was the beginning. And at that time, I did hire Donna Lucky Reed as my life coach. Thank you, God. I'm glad. I was so ready and so scared that I had no choice but to go forward. And they have been transformative for me. Oh my gosh. So this is my first interview. I am learning my business with them. But what I really appreciate about them is that it's not just about business. It's about the whole mind, body, spirit, in embracing all of life, having fun along the way, learning from your successes and not from your failures, forgiving yourself for things, when you fall. And it's like, okay, life's here and meeting life and learning, the magic and finally becoming more and more aligned with it as I go forward. So I'm really grateful. What I wanted to do when I came on to this interview was to be an example of someone in the process, because that's what I am. So if there's somebody else, I know we have people that are watching that, are in love with everything that Amos is doing and bringing all these professionals together, entrepreneurs. So, you have a different way of doing things, and yet they still have that little hesitancy, to reach out. or to, go a little bit beyond themselves. And I just wanted to be an example of, I've done that, I'm doing that, I'm in the process of it. And I am so proud of myself for being here. And I'm happy to be here. And I'm just going to keep on going.
We're so happy you're here. I love that. Learning from your successes. So often we talk about learning from our obstacles and our failures, but learning from our successes. And sometimes we fear success even, and so you're really learning to step out. We're always in expansion, aren't we? We're always growing. And everybody in this group for sure there's a high level of leveling up. Never quite getting there, right? Yeah. So just really briefly, I know Amos has interviewed Lucky and them, but I don't, what is it, a coaching business, or just briefly what?
They've done everything. They started out with coaching, but now they're into fintech, financial services. And what's wonderful is they brought all their experience from their previous endeavors into the business. So we meet every day in a mastermind, and we go over everything, and it's all personal growth. It's all personal growth, because when you have the personal growth, then you can branch out into the business. Your business will grow as you grow personally.
Yes.
And they definitely emphasize that.
So one more thing you mentioned, and it was, getting in your comfort zone. What actually got you to get out of your comfort zone of the last group you were in before? Was there something there that really made you say, yes, it's time for me to step out? Because it's scary, when you're moderately comfortable.
It was just that I perceived the people there after my time there as comfortable with where they were at. And it's like, I can't keep doing this, because every time I would go to a meeting and hear their sharing, it's like, there was not judging them, but it's like, I want to be able to experience different things so I can share different things. It was comfortable. It was so comfortable. And I was not comfortable there anymore. I needed to branch out.
Time. It was just
time. It was time. I really needed to do that. And the other thing I like to say is that, the mindset of growing and learning and being in touch with, who you are, and going through all the old ideas and limiting beliefs, and, facing the mirror and saying, okay, this is what it is, but, I can do this, this, and this, and getting over the fears for every little thing that I did to step out of my comfort zone. Whether it was cold calling in the beginning of the business 3 years ago, or joining a coffee club in my neighborhood, because I live in a senior community and I hadn't reached out to meet people. So I walked into a coffee club that they have every day.
Every day? Wow.
Well, no, 6 days a week. It's not every day. But I don't go every day, but I am a regular, and just learning everybody's interests, what their lives has been, which is always fascinating to hear where people have come from. So I did that. Last year, I decided I'm finally going to learn how to swim. So I hired a swimming teacher. Yes, I hired a swimming teacher, and I learned how to swim. Now this year, Don and Lucky live in Belize, so they're challenging me to learn how to snorkel. It's like, I'm not ready to do that yet, but I will. Wow. And then as part of my development also is I recently joined Toastmasters, because I am not practiced at public speaking or telling my story. So that's a new thing.
Well, you're doing a great job. You're doing a really good job today.
Well, thank you so much. And the last thing is that I also have my first speaking engagement in August. Another beautiful member of our team, her dream was to put on a women's symposium, and she asked me to be a speaker. So now all the things that I'm doing are going to help me, be the best I can for her and her message in August. So that's where I'm at.
Oh, well, great. Thank you for sharing. You two women have so many similarities. Are you seeing it? My goodness. So
I know as soon as Susan started talking, it's like, yeah. And it's like, and I'm 68.
Yeah. So I love, Susan Goodrich mentions power partners. You mentioned the coffee, conversations and having people. So it's
more
just
so the mentorship and the mastermind. So
yes.
The mastermind is a completely different animal, where it's like we're all like-minded in the business, we're all growing, we're all at different phases of our personal development, and we're all speaking our dreams and our hopes of what we want for the future. And if Don and Lucky point you in a certain direction, we start working towards those dreams. What can we do? And then with the rest of the mastermind, how can we support each other to achieve their goals and our goals?
I love that I'm feeling that both of you are on the platform of it's never too late to do something you want to do, for sure. I see that very clearly, and it's such an inspiration to all of us as we I too am in level 6. We call it, me and my girlfriends call it level 6. We're leveling up. So, and Susan Goodrich, you have your hands full, I know, with 14-year-olds, but how fun it is to keep you young and uplifted and inspired. I loved having the kids around. It always did that. So, so maybe next we can just talk about, if there's anything. First of all, don't let me forget to please be sure when we get off to put your website, or I know some of you had some I think Susan Goodrich, do you still have the alchemy process and the resistance remover?
Yes, it's still on. Yeah, it's still on the website. I think you can still access it. It's at transformwithsue.com. That's the website. Yeah.
Okay, and if you'll put any links or so yeah, let's talk a little bit about what's next for you, or your balance of 2023, and if there's anything you want to promote now, feel free, and we'll put the links in the chat as well.
Okay. All right. Oh, do you want me to talk a little bit?
Go ahead. Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. So what I discovered recently was in working with this dream formula and having some really successful clients, and then seeing what wasn't working, like what clients were, what they were struggling with. And I was like, what is the difference, right? I could see the behaviors. And so what I recognized was, because I'm a teacher at heart, I thought, I could teach these pieces. And I have like a program that I'm building, which is called, I'm not exactly sure what the name is. It's around happiness, because it's about life balance. And I think when we actually are able to fill in a lot of those pieces and we start to bring life a little bit more into balance, and I know that this was true for myself as well, right? I could have some areas that were completely blank, but when I could look at the formula and go, wait a minute, right? Change a little bit of focus. So if I can teach on those pieces, what that's going to do is up level, right? Up level people, and now they'll have the skills to be able to actually truly manifest their dreams without that backsliding piece that we get, right? Like we struggle, and then we slide all the way back down, or something, right? We have a belief or a value, or maybe it's somebody else's dream we're trying to create and not our own, right? That's what's really important. So I foresee this happiness piece being the stepping stone into the formula, into the dream formula. I mean, some people are ready for the formula. That's, and that's great. But for those who aren't really sure what's going on, what's missing. Yeah.
So it would be something prior to the formula. You would.
Yes.
Yeah. And how important it is to really find happiness wherever we are. That's what this stage of life, I've found that, you really can find happiness regardless of your outside circumstances when you know thyself, as you said. And it's amazing. Susan Snyder, what do you have coming up in the balance of the year? And is there something you'd like to promote or talk about?
Well, in the balance of the year, it is the symposium coming up in August. Once we're ready for registration, go ahead and make sure that the network gets the information, because it's going to be live, but it's also going to be, oh, I can't say that yet. Sorry.
Oh.
It's not my event, so I really can't say a lot about it, but that's what I have going on. But I like what Susan Goodrich is saying, as far as it is, the growth process for me has definitely started with the mindset. My mindset was closed, living in a box, you know, and it takes what it takes to finally break through the box. And for me, it was pain, emotional pain. You know, I could not ignore, you know, my soul, my heart's desire anymore, and not having any reference as to where and how to begin, and just fumbling, taking things, adding them to my life, and not being really totally satisfied with them at the same time as well. I used to call it, you know, I could put myself in the picture, but somehow it just didn't feel right.
Yeah.
Because I'm placing me there, but I am not the person who belongs there, or I haven't developed the skills to have the quality of relationships in order to maintain these little pictures or little boxes I used to put myself into. Because it just took so much transformation for me. We did an exercise not too long ago where my mentors were asking us, okay, describe yourself. Who were you and who are you now? And my list of who I was so darn negative. I can give you a few. You know, I am hateful, resentful, bitter. I am worthless, useless, you know, insignificant. You know, and those were things that I felt from a long time. Another part of my background is that I had an emotional breakdown at 16. And they say that if you have a breakdown, it's for one or two reasons. Or when you kind of like go off the edge, you know, you either need help or you need attention. I wanted attention. I would, you know, I was 16 years old, I had my life in front of me, and I didn't believe I had in my parents any encouragement to go out and explore. My mother's favorite saying to me was, well, when you grow up and get married and have your own kids, then you'll understand. And yet that answer really never satisfied me. And I played the emotional card for as long as I could. You know, at least I got their attention. But after a while, it's like, okay, this isn't working out. What do I do? You know, and my life from that point on has just been a little bit of fumbling, you know, successful. I mean, I maintained a job for 37 years. I retired. You know, I succeeded in the job. I got promotions that were matched to the amount of education I had. I am not a college graduate. My dad said, get a government job. You know, you need the security and the paycheck and the benefits. And I did, and I stayed.
Yeah,
you know,
very loyal.
And I had life happen in between, which was fine. It was nice, but it was life on the surface.
So when you identified those negative thoughts and those came up, what was the transformation to get from that to the empowering thoughts?
The transformation was being in the mastermind and hearing over and over and over again that we have the power. We can change our mind and add our action to it. You know, and over time, the more I did that, the more I believed, the more I wanted to do, the more I wanted to grow, the more I believed. And I believe, you know, that there's still nothing left in front of me that is stopping me. You know, all those hopes and dreams and the wild imagination of what my life is going to be, what I used to dream about it being as a child or a teenager or even as a young adult. It's like all those possibilities are still out there. I haven't lost anything. I'm also a breast cancer survivor, 19 years. And I had the opportunity to go to a women's cancer survivor weekend. That was an eye-opener too, because having had breast cancer at the time, I had already started, again, closing myself up in a box. You know, I can't be physically active because I've had chemo and my body is weak. So I can't do that. I can't plan my future too far ahead of time because I've had cancer and you never know if it's going to come back. And I was just closing myself off again, and that weekend really helped me break out of that and say, no, it's still my life and it's still in front of me, and I can go for it. And it wasn't until years after that that I even met Dawn and Lucky. So it was like I would have the breakthroughs and feel really good. And then a little over time, just kind of like sink back into the routine.
Certainly experienced that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you didn't stay stuck. That's the key.
No, I didn't stay stuck. And now I know, I'm responsible for being stuck. Personal development is not something you outsource. I have to do the work.
That's exactly right.
And it has gone from I have to do the work to, okay, what's next?
Or my favorite, I get to.
Yes.
Just changing the wording. It makes a huge difference.
It does. It really makes a
I get to do the work. Yeah.
Big difference.
You two are powerhouse women. Amazing. It's really amazing. Susan Goodrich, what do you want to talk about next? Is there anything you haven't covered?
Oh, well, I have, so I actually have a masterclass coming up on July 5th. And I'm going to share 3 keys to happiness. I mean, there are 7 of them, but, in the masterclass, I'll only have time to cover 3, but I have, one of them is about living with an open heart, and I have this little acronym that I use. So it's like going from living a false life to living a life of truth. And these are acronyms. And so if I share that F stands for fear, right?
Right.
There's for fear, A stands for anxiety, L stands for lack, S stands for secrets or shame, those things that we keep quiet to ourselves and we don't share. And then E is the emptiness piece. When you live a life of truth, it literally translates. I was able to translate it so that the T stands for trust. And I think this is like one of the huge pieces that I coach on, because we need to learn to trust in ourselves. We need to learn to trust in something that is much greater than ourselves, like whether you call it God or universe and something more intelligent. And then know the boundaries and know who your power partners are and know what those limits are. So I was taught something called the love rings, and I love this idea. It's fabulous. So that's the piece in the trust, right? In trusting. And then in truth, the R is restored, revived. So instead of being anxious, we're now going to be revived. Right. So are we shifting our lives? So because when you're living with an open heart, you are revived, right? You're restored, you're trusting, you're in full discernment. There's no judgment, right? We're really living truly with an open heart. And then I'm just trying to do that.
We're on you.
Yeah. We're on you. Yeah. So rather than lack, I'm looking at unlimited possibilities, right? Or unlimited abundance, right? So the abundance, right? Because when we have an open heart and we are in our body, when we're no longer in that, the fight or flight, the sympathetic nervous system, we're in the rest and digest, we're revived, and we're in the parasympathetic. And I was listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza the other day, and I was like, there's another piece, because he says all of a sudden then the sympathetic comes back in, but it's more in the revived emotion. So we're actually having access to a much greater intelligence, because when we're in the anxious, we only have access to our logic, right? We completely shut down, really. And so, so from lack to unlimited, unlimited possibilities or unlimited abundance. And then, what did I say? The other one, I should have written it down here.
That's all right. T, we're on T.
On T.
Right. Truth.
Yeah. So from,
T.
From the secrets to telling the truth, right? Like actually, and then I had recently developed something called the shame seed. And I was like, shame, which is really when we're not sharing our stories, really, it's actually a seed for growth. And then I have a transformational process that takes us to shine the light and learn forgiveness,
Yeah.
right? To forgive ourselves and others, which is so powerful and so important when living with an open heart, right? So that's and just looking at the old stories, the old beliefs and behaviors that got created around that, and then writing a new story, and then working the new story with the new beliefs and the new behaviors. And sometimes that also requires diving really deep into what I call the triggers, right? I call them sticky stories. It's like, I want to Google on those sticky stories so that we can take the charge out of those things that, like, prevent us from doing that. So that's telling the truth. And then from empty to, happily fulfilled, right? So when you really recognize what your purpose is, which I understand is our passion and our skills, when we marry those two, we can serve. So we're happily serving. I know for myself, if I'm not serving or I'm not teaching, there's something not right for me, right?
You don't have that fulfillment,
Exactly.
That we're looking for.
Yeah.
So I love that. So we go trust, restore, unlimited abundance, telling the truth, and happy.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Happily fulfilled. So yes, I'm going to be sharing a little bit about
that's a mastermind class, right?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And that'll be the sort of the introduction to introducing the happiness course. It's kind of the precursor to that. So, and that's a freebie. So, come to the happiness class. And,
awesome. Well, please put the links to your landing page or whatever you have available if now, or you can come back and add it if you aren't quite ready, and put it into the network.
Okay.
Perfect. Awesome. Really exciting stuff going on. And you, Susan Snyder?
I just love hearing Susan, because for me, being in the process, it's like I haven't studied the psychological, the physical, it's like the things that I'm experiencing, there's a psychological component, there's a physical component, definitely the spiritual, because since I've started my journey, I've been, with the guidance, been able to tap into, my spiritual side belief. And we spoke about it earlier, how you mentioned that just changing one little word. And for me, I did have problems with God, because that was a representative of, sooner or later, it's like, yeah, he loves me, but I'm going to have to stand in judgment in front of him. Excuse me, and with Dawn and Lucky, I just changed the word to universe. Let's just use universe, and that was just such an eye-opening, heart-freeing word that just changed. It's like I had beliefs that got covered with the negative and tarnished with my experience and my closed-mindedness, and then once these little words just came, it was just that minor little tweak, and all this was like a dominoes just falling down into alignment. And I'm so grateful for that, and in the process is where I've been finding my happiness. I'm currently, I'm proud of myself for being here. I'm happy that I didn't let fear stop me. I'm grateful that I had the courage to reach out and do different and new things. I made a friend in the parking lot of the grocery store because I started practicing talking to people. And it doesn't have to be anything big. And that was one of the limiting beliefs that I had when I started this. It's like, I don't have that experience. I don't have anything. I can't see me. The gap is too wide. And finding out, what? Gap isn't that wide. It's like that elephant in the room. It's just a little bite at a time. Exactly. And, you want gravy on that? It's like, yes, I do.
Ask for it all, right?
Ask for it all. And that was another thing. It's like, oh no, I am unworthy. I can't ask. Yeah. Why not? Why not? Or waiting for permission. I'm waiting for somebody outside to give me the permission to be who I want to be in the inside and the outside. And finding out that, no, I have that. And just be brave enough to take the steps and keep on going and keep on growing. And nothing's stopping me now. I have nothing stopping me now. God bless my husband, miss him dearly. However, I have my life in front of me. What do I want to do? Where do I want to go?
Well,
I
you
have
two
dreams and
women,
goals.
both of you are like it's been a total joy, because just to see the light and where you're going, I can't wait to watch where you're both going. You still have both have such insight and wisdom that I love to continue watching. Is there anything else, Susan Goodrich, that you would like to mention or say, or to our audience, our Empower audience, that anything specific?
Well, it's interesting. There was something that Susan mentioned that I that kind of brought up like an old story, and I didn't talk about my past. There was a time in my life in my late 20s where things didn't go well, and I was shunned from all of the people, and because of that, I went into the shame place myself, and I really isolated. Like, that's what happened to me. I really isolated. And it's only recently that I really discovered how much I love being with people. I am a very social being. And that's what really lights me up when I am with other people. And, it was a journey for me. Like, I had to, go through a lot of these pieces. And what I find is that we are always having breakthroughs, right? We're always evolving. Always. That's my experience. Yeah.
We're never done. We're never done.
We're like onions, right? And you
exactly
keep peeling the layers, like, oh, there's another one.
Yeah. And how beautiful that is, that we just get to keep going. And
it's just life and life's experiences, and living it to the fullest, and accepting the abundance and sharing it. Definitely sharing it, because I find for myself, people of my age, and I am in fintech, right now economically it's not the most comfortable time to be living, but yet there's answers out there, and we don't have to hold our breath or stand still. So I'm very grateful to be able to share and say, hey, I've got this thing over here, and you need to meet my friends, because I'm learning too. And it's like the hope is always out there. And I think for so long, through programming in one form or another, if you're not strong, or if you're not so connected that the programming is working on you, this is the limit right here. Life is outside of the program.
Boundaries around that. Boundaries are so important, especially in our current environment, right?
There was one thing that Susan just mentioned that just triggered on, like the unlimited possibilities, right? It just reminds me of, it's like quantum physics, really. Like, every possibility exists here on the plane, and we just get to choose which one, right? We get to choose which one we want to
choose. Which one.
And we could adjust as we go. And that, to me, I think it's such a freeing aspect of now looking at my future. My goal, my bottom line goal is I want my little house in the mountains. Don't ask me why. I've always wanted it since a child, but the journey there, I can change my mind, and that's okay. I'm here for the ride. Let's go. Let's see what's happening. The manifestation, to learning that aspect of it. It's like, okay, well, I want it. I'm going to work towards it. Okay, life, what do we got?
Yeah, you get to pick your reality. It's amazing, isn't it? Once you realize that and understand. Yeah. So, okay, we're wrapping up here to the end of our time. If there's any other thing you'd like to mention or say, either of you or both of you, or.
Well, I think one of my secrets, and what I see is my clients that are really rock stars, it's doing the practices, right? It's committing to doing the practices, and it's a daily thing, right? And that's what evolves us. And it's not a straight line, right? No. It is not a straight line, right? The old story, new story, we call this holding paradox, right? It's not a complete straight line, but yeah, it's the practices that that keep us going.
The daily, everyday practices make a big difference, don't they? Yeah.
Yes, they do. And for me, it would be that the way we put it in our group, it's learning how to pivot.
Absolutely.
Just, sometimes you just have to pivot. My mind might have been this way, and everything's saying, no, okay, time to pivot. I've given this enough energy. It's not working. Next.
Wow. You two are both amazing women and have so much knowledge. And thank you so much. The energy today has been awesome. And the synergies between you two, how nice. And I'm so grateful. Yeah. So thank you. And we look forward to hearing more from you in the network. Please don't forget to write any links or things you'd like to send to, because you're in the right place, I think, for sure. So thank you, ladies, today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
A pleasure, an honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Nice to meet you too, Susan.
I like what Kathy said, the Susans. Now we're the Susans.
The Susans.
The Empower Network TV and the Susans. We're grateful for you. I don't know.